Well, before the break, we learned how to protect our family, including our little ones and furry ones, from the cold weather. But something else we want to make sure is safe and sound when the temperatures drop: this guy.
Well, many of us are so dependent on our gadgets that it's important they work. But have you noticed that when it's frigid, your electronics start malfunctioning? Today, Jimmy tells us why and how you can prevent it.
Your phone is just like you. It doesn't like the cold. Case in point, in less than 5 minutes outside, this phone went from 25% battery life to dead in single-digit temperatures.
All comes down to the battery, and chemical reaction takes place. As it gets cold, the chemical reaction slows down, so it can't produce a lot of energy.
According to the Geek Squad at Best Buy, at 32 degrees or freezing, the battery life drops 20%, and it gets worse from there.
Basically, batteries, when they go at 0 degrees, your battery life will cut in half. Go from 100% down to 50% when the battery is at 0 degrees. When the phone shuts down, it may appear that the battery is dead, but most likely it's just that the chemical reaction isn't happening. So if you get it warm, put it in your pocket for about a half hour, get it back up to that optimal level, most likely you'll be able to power it on and get a little bit of a charge out of it.
Justin has some tips to preserve your battery life. For Android, set your phone to power saving mode.
And that basically dims your display, dims the processing power, and makes it last up to 30% longer.
For iPhone, turn down the brightness and turn off the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Your other option is to get a portable battery pack.
And also what they do now too is make cases that has a battery built into it as well. So you don't need to actually plug your phone in. Your case is recharging your phone.
Now, another thing to keep in mind is not all phones are created equal. Some experts say Apple iPhones are particularly bad in the cold. They're rated from 32 degrees to 95 degrees. Samsung does a little better. They're rated from -4 up to 128 degrees. Justin says the optimal temperature for your phone and its battery is 70 degrees. So the best way to save a battery in the cold is just to put it in your pocket.
Put it in your pocket. All right. Well, somebody else who really loves their gadgets are meteorologists. That's because they help forecast the weather for our area.
But just as important as the gadget is being in the know when it comes to what to expect weather-wise here on Delmarva. And somebody who is certainly in the know is WBOC Chief Meteorologist Dan Satterfield. Dan, thanks for joining us.
And I have mine here with me as well. I got to tell you a story. At the South Pole, it's so cold there that if you want to take a camera out and shoot it, your batteries are dead. So you know what you do? It's the hardest thing to do too, is you take your battery from your camera and you stick it up against your skin with a piece of tape. And then when you're out there and you're ready to shoot, you have that perfect shot, and it hurts to do it because it was 29 below with the 60 below. But you quickly unzip, grab it out, stick it in the camera because it'll last 5 minutes at the South Pole.
All right. Well, speaking of the cold, this winter, you know, we're only like a month into it, and we're not out of the woods when it comes to the cold.
No, we're actually about to go into a pattern. We're going into it right now that I can't tell you if and what day we might see snow, but it's a snowy pattern. It's going to give us our best shot so far in the winter of getting some snow. Now, we had some yesterday over northern Delmarva. We had that ice event in Salisbury, but we haven't had any big blizzards up the East Coast so far. But we're in a pattern where that could happen in the next 7 to 10 days.
So I know it probably varies, but when do we typically see snow here?
Oh, this is about right now.
Okay.
I mean, we're now coming up mid-January into late February. That is your top snow times. Once you get before or after that, it starts to go down.
So if we get it, we shouldn't complain because this is about when we get it.
Right. So we're going into a pattern that's very promising if you're a snow lover, and it's climatologically the time of the year we'd expect it. So if you're a snow lover like me, no such thing as too much snow. Then this is your next 10 days. I'm not saying we're going to get one. We may miss, but we got a shot.
So we're pretty much on track, though, precipitation-wise and temperature-wise.
Yeah, our winter so far has been about normal. It may be even at times a little bit above normal, but we're going back and forth. Nothing like last winter, and the weather patterns look a lot different than last winter.
Now, we just heard about protecting our gadgets in the cold, and that's something, like you said, you're particularly interested in because you do use gadgets to forecast the weather.
This iPhone may very well, and Android phones as well, may be about to change forecasting forever.
Really?
Here's the thing. Right now, to forecast the weather, we use numerical models. And if you think of this table in front of me as a map of the United States, we basically put a little sugar cube on it, layer it that high with sugar cubes. Every one of those sugar cubes is where we give the weather for. We have to give it a starting point. Then we run it into the future. Okay? Now, A better model means the sugar cubes are tinier. So we start with the weather here and right next door. Right now our best computer models have a resolution of about 4 kilometers. If we had it down to a 1/2 kilometer, you would have a model that could actually simulate sea breeze fronts and individual thunderstorms.
Right, which is something we see a lot of here.
Right. So if you want really good short-term forecast, you need to have a really accurate model. Well, we need to have data to put into that model to start it. Right now, how many weather stations do we have in Maryland that are official? 13, 14? What if you had an iPhone that could tell what the pressure was everywhere walking around, all the million people walking around Maryland, and that data went into a computer to initialize it?
So what would we be doing with those iPhones?
Well,
how would we do it?
It'd all do it in the background. It didn't care who you are. It would just say, here's a pressure at this point, and sends it into a data service. Well, I want to show you something because the reality is there. This is an app on my iPhone. And I don't know, I can hold it up if you want to zoom in on it. It shows the pressure in this room right now is 1,024 millibars.
Okay.
All right, I want to show you how accurate this sensor is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand up here. I'm going to get a little bit off-camera shot here. I'm going to hold this thing right up here just for a few seconds here. And then that's good enough. Now I'm going to take it all the way down to the floor here and lay it down here on the floor for just a second here.
Okay.
This is cutting edge stuff here.
Yeah, and now I don't know if you folks will be able to see it at home, but you guys can see that little graph goes down. That was when I held it up, and then it goes up when I put it on the floor.
Wow.
So we were wondering, some meteorologists were wondering, how accurate is the sensor and pressure in an iPhone? Someone took it out to the National Weather Service office where they have a big, very sophisticated instrument. It was almost spot on.
How about that?
Just in the palm of your hand.
You have this kind of data, and it can change the world. They can also figure out what the air temperature is based on what your battery's average temperature is and what it is right now where you are. Even though you might have it in your pocket, they can get within 3 degrees of the outside air temperature. The world